Hey, welcome to New Comic Book Day Book Club. Looking at 2021. And not in any kind of important political sense, but in the comic book sense. Like, what were our favorite books?
The most important sense.
Yeah, the most enjoyable sense. I'm obviously John from John's Comics with Kids. This is Alec from White Whale Comics. Alec, how's it going, man?
It's going all right. How are you?
I mean, I'm just excited to talk about some good books for a change.
I mean, I feel like this past year with our new format, we have talked about good books more often than we have in the past.
Certainly, yeah, with more regularity. That's fair. But I still feel like it's out of the norm.
Yeah, well, I mean, we still had the Hulk week, so
that's true. That was a week. But we're here tonight to really celebrate the best of the best, as far as we are concerned. Books that we really enjoyed, and hopefully hear from you in the chat as well. If there's books that we missed, books that you want to talk about. We both sort of used our own criteria to kind of come up with our favorites. We're going to skip around. It's not really going to be like a list. We're not going to count it all down. Instead, it's going to be more about, looking at certain publishers, books from those publishers we loved. And then we'll try to finish with our top three, like, favorites of the year that we really loved. And then we're going to go through some favorite covers from 2021 as well, so that we can show you and highlight some of the cover work that we thought was really spectacular. Does that sound about right? Did I do that?
I think you covered all of the bases right there.
So there you go.
I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted by a comment from J Hood a moment ago.
Oh, yeah? Well, let's go through the comments and say hello to Rob Boswell going woot woot in the chat. And J Hood with the fun capital letter, lowercase letter fun going on there. And JP Budget Collecting shaming me. And Jennifer from Comics Will Break Your Heart saying hello. And was it this one?
Oh, no.
Like $1 waiting on a dime?
No. Keep going.
Okay. Well, hello.
I mean, he's not wrong. It just seems a bit out of context.
A bit much. We got Scott in the chat. Scott's going to be on Comic Gories in, I think, 3 weeks here. So I'm excited to hang out with Scott on the channel here soon. Gore is here, and really he is like prime for a show like this, where we're really breaking down some of the favorites of the year, because he's always got some great opinions, and I'd be excited to hear some of that. I mean, Layla Starr is the thumbnail, so you can assume that it will come up for sure. We also have done a bunch of discussions of Carmen, so that's a fair guess that might appear in some form or other. We got Justin from No Good Comics. He's got his video coming up soon, I think maybe tomorrow or the next day, looking at his favorites from 2021. He and I were sharing and comparing over the last few days. We got Old Wolf Tony in the chat. How's it going, my friend? And let's see here. Did I catch everybody? I think you should definitely, and if you're looking on other people's videos and lists, this is a book that's been coming up a ton. Little Bird, dude, you're behind. You might be about 3 years
Little
off.
Bird always makes the list.
I mean, yes, because Little Bird is the land.
You got that right.
Bub is in the chat. What is going on, Bub? He says, I don't read any modern books, so this will be a recommendation show, which is a great point. You know, a lot of these lists, it's a great opportunity to look into getting a trade if you want to check out, especially with indies, the chance to read some of these books. And I think, for me, at least, I tend to enjoy reading indies in trade more than any other.
And it's not a bad way to go about it. Let us weed through all the garbage so you don't have to read all that nonsense, and we'll just, kind of skim the fat off the top and let you enjoy the delicious caloric intake of good books. I don't know.
Less
that
dreck.
Got away from me.
That's our real goal here. Get you away from the dreck. Save you the trouble.
Although, our opinion by no means is gold. It's just
yes, there's no standard.
It's just what we happen to like. I'm sure many people will disagree, even in the chat tonight.
Ooh, there you go. J Hood says he got the Bear Windsor Smith Monster hardcover and the first Black Hammer Omni for Christmas.
Very nice.
That's some good fun you're gonna enjoy there. That's for sure. So what I'm going to discuss a little what I did for coming up with all this stuff. Then I'll let Alec kind of go through his thought process, just so that people are aware kind of maybe the constraints we put on ourselves or how we were thinking about this concept. I will say last year I was pretty hard on the book We Live because I felt like, yeah, they've published 3 issues, but I don't know how this is going to turn out. I'm enjoying it, but could I include it? So it did not make the list last year, but it finished so strong, it made a huge chance at being a contender this year. So that issue for me of, is a mini series done, and do I think they'll screw the pooch, or do I think they'll stick the landing? That is always in my mind with some books that haven't finished. So I'm going to discuss Nice House on the Lake, but the truth is Nice House on the Lake doesn't rate for me because I am very concerned about how that will finish up versus something like Not All Robots, which is going to come up as well for me, has only just 1 issue left. And I have very few concerns that they're going to just blow it here at the end. So that issue for me was weighing on me when I was, and I made a list of about 25 books and kind of went back and forth on where do they fit overall for me. And again, it was that issue of, are they done as a mini series? And if they're not, do I think they have enough juice to like finish strong?
Yeah, I went with a different approach.
Sure.
I mean, and partially it's because I am a bit limited, my own fault, because I don't have as much time to read books lately as I have in the past or as I would like. So I had a bit of a smaller pool to pick from. And on top of that, if anyone knows me or watches this show, knows that I tend to be very picky and critical of what I consider to be the best of the best. So on top of not reading as much as I used to,
right?
I had to only pick from things that I really enjoyed. So having said all that, I basically went with just not taking the future or possible future into account and just saying, what have I read? What books have I read that I have enjoyed reading?
Sure.
And even if it's 1 or 2 issues, but those 1 or 2 issues stood out to me, they're still books that I have enjoyed this year more than anything else. So that's how I went about it.
And that is totally fair. And I felt really torn last year when that issue came up for We Live. But the truth is, this year for me was highlighting a ton of books that started strong and didn't finish strong. And I'll get into some of those as well. So it was like I go back and forth on this challenge. And so it's a tricky needle to thread for me in some ways. We got TJ the Slab Dragon. Good to see you, TJ. I hope you're doing well, my man. Alex, this show equals Alex hates 98% of everything. I mean,
it's not entirely
once upon
true.
a time.
I don't hate 90%, 8% of anything. I'm critical of 100% of everything. Like I feel, and I've talked about this before. Everything should be looked at under, especially when we're doing a show like this.
Right.
It should be looked at under a magnifying glass and say, okay, where are the opportunities to make this better, and where are the the things that's done that it succeeds at.
However, I will say on this image on your computer or your phone or your TV, Alec is 50% Layla Starr. If you really look, he's got boobs.
And I am also 50% hair right now.
And there's that too.
But yes,
we tend to be critical, I think, and I don't think that's a bad thing. And
like I'm critical.
We try to give you a score and where the book might rank overall, but then it doesn't mean you can't look at flaws and where it could have been better.
I mean, to Old Wolf's point, I do tend to dislike more things than I'd like, though.
See, Gore saying Alec is a good critic right there. See?
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's high praise for coming from Gore.
And hence his earlier comment. There you go.
Oh, okay. I get it now. He's talking about Layla Starr.
Yeah.
Instead of having a nice body. Okay.
So I thought
I made the thumbnail and did not think about that at all. but I'm not
I
mad.
mean, I could swap us and see if
I'm
I
not
land
mad.
where I land. Because see, I'm over
Yeah.
more, and you know, it's not as big a deal. But when I put images up, I'm gonna have to slide over. So
Yeah, that's fine. I don't mind.
So
live
I
good.
thought. I mean, if you want, you can certainly. I mean, it's gonna like mess with my head, but like, I thought it would be fun if we went like sort of got the big two out of the way as far as noteworthy books from the big two, and then we can move into some indies and then finish with the top three before and then some covers. What do you think?
Sounds great.
All right. I want to start with DC. Brian, how's it going, man? Good to see you.
Yeah.
I felt like DC had a ton of things that were really enjoyable, and in my top 25 or whatever of the year, there were like 4 or 5 DC books that I thought were really worthy of being on that list. I want to talk about Far Sector, which is for me a book that like I saw on Brian from Simple Man's Comics. It made his list. I was very happy. I feel like Far Sector is a book that just nobody talks about, and I feel like was worthy of the year. And if like load an image for that for people to see, yeah, I think N.K. Jemisin, Jamal Campbell, amazing art, really good storyteller with the artwork. And I love a good Green Lantern story. And this was a very original Green Lantern story. I think you and I talked a lot about how the social issues brought up here, amazing. And I just really was impressed with it felt like really highbrow science fiction that wanted to peel back the layers on society by showing us a different society. You know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, I don't because I didn't read it, but I follow.
But that concept,
yeah,
you
sure.
know.
I have a kind of an unrelated question because related to what you were talking about, but unrelated to the book itself. You mentioned that you feel like not a lot of people are talking about it. Do you think books like this are hurt by being on an imprint? It's from Young Animal.
I do for 2 reasons. One, Young Animal as an imprint sounds like something for kids.
Yes,
and
it's definitely not.
No. This feels more like a Black Label book with the swearing, with the talk about sex and things, like the race discussions. This is a very heady book that feels like it could have been a really fun Black Label book. And the Young Animal imprint, I think, really did hurt the availability. People who found this were Green Lantern fans, or N.K. Jemisin, who is a very popular science fiction writer outside of comic books. I think her following found this book,
Right.
Sorry.
It was just a thought I had.
The Comic Board, a great YouTuber, is a fan of Far Sector along with John. He was the only one I know who was consistent. Yeah. So, and again, Brian, shout out to Brian from Simple Man's Comics. If you guys follow that YouTuber, really great community member. And I met him in Baltimore, and he's one of the few people I saw really highlighting this. And I think it was worth it. It felt like a Black Label book to me, and I just don't think it gets enough reps. So I had this in my top 10, not my top 5, but I had this in my top 10. And I just felt like I wanted to highlight some of that. Did you have any DC books outside of your top 3 that you wanted to highlight or that you had read?
Yeah. I never thought I would be including a Tom Taylor book on my best of year list because I tend to not enjoy the stuff he does. But I got to say, like Nightwing, from what I've read of it so far, and I am a little behind. It's been fun. And like, that's what I'm not saying like that's exclusively what superhero books should be, that you can't make serious superhero books, but like when everyone is trying to do this dark, gritty, hard-hitting stuff all the time, it just gets like so overdone. And it was nice to see a book, and like the art's phenomenal in it, and it was just a cool, and again, not perfect by any means, but just a refreshing take on the character, and especially for a bad character.
Well, and I don't know if you've read this newest issue or got the newest issue, but they did some really creative art storytelling. The artwork
That was
the
where you laid it out. It could be one single image.
Yeah, really just a create. I think that they're pushing a lot of creative boundaries on this, and this is a top 5 of the year for me for sure. And if it weren't, it would easily have been the top 3 if it weren't for that weird 3-issue Fear State tie-in thing that was good, but the first issue of that was easily the worst issue they've done on Nightwing since Tom Taylor took over, and that DC editorial decision-making stuff does hurt the overall enjoyment, at least for me as a reader.
I when stuff like that happens, I can only imagine the writers just rolling their eyes when editorial comes to them and saying, hey, we're doing this crossover event. You need to depart from what you're doing for 3 issues to write this other thing. And just it totally derails what they're trying to do on the book. But that's the way the big 2 decide to do things all the time. And I think more often than not, it hurts the book. And like, I really wonder how many more copies they're selling, because I know I never buy crossovers. People I talk to say they never buy crossovers unless you're already reading the book. Is it to get people to buy the main title? Like if you're reading Nightwing and you read these 3 issues and you're like, oh, well,
or is it to sell a bigger, larger format trade later down the line? They can stuff it with more issues and spend up the price. I don't know. I will say the Thirst Trap covers are pretty amazing in this run. So, no shame on those books. There's some amazing. They had the one with him, like the shirtless Nightwing with a puppy. I mean, like, can you argue that there's a better female Thirst Trap than that? I mean, it's pretty solid. You get puppies and a good looking guy. They've been doing the boob covers for men for quite a while. What's the problem with the Thirst Trap dog puppy cover? I'm just saying. I do love a good thirst trap. I mean, why not? You got to create the thirst somewhere. So this is another great DC book. And I didn't load any images, but I wanted to mention, Tom Taylor's Superman, Son of Kal-El. I've been really enjoying that. That would probably make my top 20, 25. Batman Imposter. I'm mentioning a Batman book, Greg. Don't lose your cool. But that was a great 3. If you're looking for like a throwback, old school kind of detective comic with Batman, 3-issue miniseries, Batman Imposter was a very fun read and would crack the top 25 for me somewhere probably as well. So on the DC side, those were all really good ones to bring up. And then I mentioned Nice House on the Lake. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about, I don't know how much of that you've read. I want to say they're on 8 of 12, or did they extend it to 16? I can't remember.
I don't know if they've extended it. I'm not sure, but I know they're taking some hiatus or something, right?
Yeah.
Which is never good for a book. Unless you're Saga. It could take off 3 years and people will still want to read it.
Oh, for sure.
But like, I feel like it just loses so much steam, especially on a 12-issue book. It's just like,
yeah. Looks like there's a lot of Batman fans mentioning Batman Imposter and Sorrentino, the great artwork by Andrea Sorrentino. But for me, I do think there were some, as good as Nice House on the Lake is, I am still feeling like it's a real questionable property for me. I don't know what's going to happen. I could see the ending being amazing, and it's like one of the best books for next year that it's like the We Live of next year for me. Or I could see it just being a complete debacle that I'm like, okay, I'm never going to talk about this book ever again. So I can't decide where I am with this book.
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, what I've read of it so far, I've enjoyed as one of the most enjoyable books I've read this year.
Mm.
If it blows it, then that's 2022's problem, not 2021.
It's a great point. Another Superman, Son of Kal-El fan going on there. And I agree with you, that Tyler, that sometimes we need our thirst quenched. And there you go. Lots of thirst, lots of lovers for the thirst here. How you feeling good about DC? Should we move on to Marvel?
Yeah. I mean, my Marvel list, unsurprisingly, is very short.
And I would say the same for me. And it kind of falls into two titles. One that made my top 3, so I'm not going to mention it here. And then X books. It's like, I want to mention a handful of X titles that I've really enjoyed this year that have been impactful and exciting. So Hellions, a great book about like the fringe mutants and the troubles they're getting into, and some really powerful final issues. The last 2 or 3 really intense, like look at parenthood and violence and like, yeah, really crazy stuff going on there. Inferno just wrapped. Read it last night or this morning. Great read. Sword, which is basically the Storm book in a lot of ways, really been great, and I could read more and more and more of that. And then lastly, Way of X.
You're biased.
Very biased. The Way of X book with Nightcrawler as a sort of religious figure trying to define what does resurrection mean and does that change the core or the soul of a person? And some really heavy questions about this silly concept of, we can just bring people back from the dead. Like, I like though they gave it some weight with that Way of X books. So I am very pumped on those that set of 4 books from this last year that I really, really was impressed with. Outside of that,
Captain Krakoa.
Yeah, fucking. Sorry, I'm cursing on my own channel. I read that book just like 10 minutes ago. Outside of that, I wanted to mention, you mentioned, I can't believe Tom Taylor's Nightwing made my list. And it reminded me of the conversations we had, was it 2 years ago when you had Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil on your list?
I wasn't surprised by that. I've always enjoyed Chip Zdarsky.
I know, but I was surprised. I didn't even know you were reading it. And so, of course, this would be a top 10 book for me still. I don't know if you're still reading it.
I am not.
Okay.
So
this is a book that's a top 10 for me.
I mean, not for lack of interest, just from lack of...
Probably a little interest.
I mean, I don't know. I like missed an issue or 2, and then it was just like, well, I'll just read it later.
So, I mean, I've been on it from the beginning, and I was excited that you were as big a fan, at least at the beginning from it. And
I mean, Chip Zdarsky is like a top tier talent as far as I'm concerned right now. Like he is one of those people who I don't think like gets enough recognition. Like everyone's flipping out over Donny Cates, and I think Chip Zdarsky is on like many tiers above Donny Cates.
Oh, absolutely. He just doesn't play the like speculation Twitter
out.
game
Good
same
luck
way.
Tracking down a God of Hammer's first appearance today, but I mean, he did do Elektra as Daredevil though, so
he did, and people were joking, "Oh, that's just going to be a little one and done thing. That issue's not going to be worth anything." Surprise! It's going to get its own ongoing series.
Yeah.
What J Hood? I know you're not a big fan of the Hickman run, but the way I talk about it makes you doubt my love for X-Men. Come on, that's extreme. Maybe it means that my love knows no bounds.
I was going to say, I think it's like a parent. You're going to love your child no matter what.
So there's that. So anyways, I'm a Daredevil fan. They just wrapped the 36 issue arc of Zdarsky on Daredevil. They've moved into the Devil's Reign, and then later they'll move into the Elektra story. So I just am very happy with where Zdarsky has taken this story for now. And that wraps up Marvel for me. I skipped a certain book that's going to end up in the top 3.
Yeah, so we can.
Was there anything else?
No, that's Marvel, the one for me.
That's the only other one?
Yeah.
All right, so then good. Look, we're at 24 minutes in. We finished with the big 2 outside of anything that might land in our top 3 of the year. Indies. It's time for indies.
My favorites.
Right? Is there a book that you want to talk about that I can bring up for you?
Sure. I mean, I assume it's on your list as well, and I'm guessing from some context clues that maybe it's not in your top 3 is Carmen.
You're correct. It would probably be just outside my top 10. But it's right there on the cusp.
Yeah.
Like 11.
I think it, for me, suffered a little bit because it was coming out at the same time as another book that I won't mention to keep suspense going, but I'm sure everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about. That it dealt with a lot of the same things, and
right.
It just did it so much more artfully and interestingly.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Jennifer, for one, really disliked this book, so I know this is more of a kind of a split among a lot of people, because I've heard some other people who don't like it as much, but I thought it did some really interesting things. I think, some of the art was just absolutely tremendous in it, and
really outside of the box. Some of those like cityscape layouts where it's like a map almost.
But like, and I had some criticisms of it. Some issues were a little not quite as good as some others, and some of the things that kind of wrapped up the story kind of I felt were unnecessary to, we talked about that when we were finishing our discussion with it, where it was just like he did too much for some reason. But overall, like it's really interesting kind of look at life and death and all those existential things that I like in my comic books and my media.
Totally. It's funny because over winter break, I read a book my dad recommended to me that if you guys watched one of the Saturday morning comics where my dad was with me, he mentioned this book called The Midnight Library about a young lady who commits suicide, and in the gap between life and death has this whole life experience, reevaluating her time on this planet. And that's a really great, less than, I think it's like 300-page novel. And in that, the librarian offers this young lady the chance to open a lot of different books to show her what her life would have been with different choices she could have made. If you'd gone to school to study biology like you had hoped to, this is where your life might have gone, right? If you had decided to start dating this guy, this is where you would have ended up. If you had decided to go X, Y, or Z, like, this is where you would have gone. And so she experiences her life in several different ways, and it's all based on the idea of regret holding her back. And there's some of that to go here, where it's really the psychology of Carmen that is the crux of the story. The issue is, I think Carmen is a little vapid, and in that way doesn't have the same weight as the protagonist in Midnight Library, where I felt like watching the lady in Midnight Library look at her own life and realize the feeling of helplessness and not having control over her life was really just that. It was just a feeling that she allowed herself to live in. And if she had taken the time to really take control of her life, she would have been far happier. Not necessarily the circumstances that make her life happy, but how she responds to them. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so it was a beautiful book that I think I instantly finished it and felt like, see, this is way better than Carmen. That was like how I came out of it. Like I instantly compared the two.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it's like very comparable as far as concept goes, but is it really fair to compare a 6-issue comic with a novel?
No, not
obviously.
In any way.
A novel has a lot more room to stretch its legs with a concept like that. But
totally.
I
want again for Carmen fans, I wanted to throw that out there just as something they might want to think about.
I just finished the book myself. Can you believe it?
Yeah. What was it called?
It's called Clara and the Sun.
Clara and the Sun. I don't know that one. What's it about? Do you want to take a second, or is that going to derail us? What do you think?
No. I mean,
we derail everything.
The really interesting thing for me was how it was told. It's told from the perspective of this young female robot who they call them AFs, which they never really say what that means, but I assume it's artificial friend.
I was going to say automated. That was what my head went.
Okay. And they basically get purchased for teenagers to be their companions,
So if they're having social issues or they're not connecting.
Well, so the thing is that I found so interesting was that it's told from the perspective of this robot. So you kind of, it touches on all the concepts of this futuristic world, but only from so far as the robot understands them from perceiving them. So like clearly the author had this very big or like multiple big concepts and ideas, but they never really like flush them out because it's all just, taken from her perspective.
Because she wouldn't interpret those events and whatever the same way a human would with all the connective tissue.
Yeah, I mean, it's even more than that, where it's like she is just kind of like, much like the reader, dropped into this situation and doesn't really understand a lot of things that happen with society. So she can only understand what people around her are talking about. And obviously, in a real world, no one's going to sit there and expound on these topics that everyone already knows about because it's just society.
to give the context for that robot.
So,
so what's the book called again? Sorry.
Clara and the Sun, Klara.
So look, we're reading actual novels, not graphic ones.
I mean, I listened to it.
Still, it counts. Don't discount it. Okay, so we hit that. We hit Carmen, which we've done a ton of talking about Carmen. I do feel like I need, and I've mentioned it 3 or 4 times. I just want to spend a second on We Live. So I do think this story ended really well. I think there was a little mix of reaction. Some people loved the ending, how it set up a future story arc where it was almost like this was a prequel to another comic, and you could enjoy it as the prequel that it was, or you could look at it as like a setup for some other story that you can get later on. I really found this a kick in the pants. It had slight Road Warrior vibes to it. The art was really great. I think the Miranda brothers hit this really out of the park for me. And so this is a top 10 2020. I'm counting it as 2021 because they had about half the issues published in 2021 and stuck the landing for me in 2021. But worth the price of a trade, absolutely. And you should definitely check it out if you had totally missed it and didn't see it. Has to do with there's a ton of post-apocalyptic futures these days. And in this case, a bunch of children being escorted to a place where they were being picked up by alien spaceships that would take them away from Earth because Earth is just becoming a wasteland. And the only way you get on the ship is if you have these special wristbands, these that will allow you on. And so adults are bringing them with the hope of like sneaking on and getting along with them. Really, really well done. And I really enjoyed it. And yes, it is not. It's not a kid's book. It's definitely violent. It's definitely post-apocalyptic. But I really enjoyed it. And yeah, We Live White and Black coming soon. I know there's a sequel series coming along well, and I really enjoyed it.
And I mean, clearly, someone likes this enough because, like everything else nowadays, it's been optioned. But this first issue has actually gone up quite a bit in value compared to other things that have been optioned that haven't. So clearly there are some fans out there who believe in it as a property enough to push the price up.
And I want to say the original cover A #1 is a gatefold, like it folds open, and it's easier to get probably some damage to it in that way, but I don't know. But it's a harder paper too, a thicker paper. J-Hood, I think a lot of people had this reaction too, where they felt like the ending was a little jarring, but I thought it was really well done. So Aftershock had a good year for me, and this was a great Aftershock book. Was there another book you wanted me to bring up? Are we doing all right? Or
let's see, where's my list? Well, one that I know that you didn't put on your list is May's book.
Yeah, absolutely. The Year of Lumiere. He's everywhere right now.
The Year of Lumiere. Yeah, that dude does a lot of work.
Right?
He stays busy.
And to still stay that consistent, too.
Yeah. And not only that consistent, but do things like this where it's to me, like really interesting and thoughtful. So not only are you like, oh, everything he does is pretty good, but like every once in a while he'll do something like this. For me, that's just like, wow, he still really like has those home runs in his repertoire.
Well, and he's also doing the art on this as
Right.
well as the writing. And I think he's had a couple of 3 books maybe that he's done that for in the last handful of years.
Yeah.
And I think his art style tends to be love it or hate it as well, because it's a very, and I think we commented that it's not that it's unfinished. It's that it feels intentionally not beautified.
Yeah.
Like it's not designed to be glossy and attractive. It's supposed to be suited to the tale, which is usually just a little more raw.
Yeah, and on top of that, like for, you know, if you're coming from strictly being a superhero fan, it's probably
Right.
going to be very jarring for you. But for someone who reads a lot of indie books and a lot of like more underground stuff, you know, this is like par for the course. It's like, are you telling a good story with the visuals? Does it have like a consistent look? Is it,
Right.
you know, there's an artistry to it? I'm on board. You know, it doesn't have to be like Jim Lee pencils on everything. Because I think if this
Right.
book had like those type of, you know, superhero artist on it, it would lose something for me.
Mm-hmm. And some people talking about the price of the book, obviously publishing a larger indie book, because those are pretty thick books, but like Trail is saying, not a ton of talking on the pages, a lot of art bleeding through from page to page. So it tended to be a pretty quick read for the $6. But to your point, I think the emotional impact was intense. Like it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take something that makes me feel something when I'm done with it, even if it takes me half the time to read it, versus something that has a ton of words on the page that just annoys me because there's no point to the, you know, dialogue, or there's, you know,
it's all exposition.
It's all exposition, or it's deceased, where they're just explaining what you're seeing in the panel with word bubbles.
Hashtag Silver Age sucks. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean,
you got to read Stan Lee's paragraphs.
Yeah. So I mean,
but yeah, I mean, I think
certainly understand that.
I think in a trade where you're following the red thread through the book, that could be a really cool experience as well for this.
I certainly understand that critique, though, of feeling like, oh, I spent $6 on this and I was done in 2 minutes. Like,
yeah,
I think part of that comes from, and I do that myself, but part of that comes from, you know, the way comics tend to be, especially in the mainstream comics, is that, you know, it's about, you're just flipping the page. Whereas something like this, I think you can take it at a slower pace and look at the page more carefully, even though it doesn't have a lot of dialogue on it, because it's about, you know, the relationship of the panels and about, you know, those quiet moments you can take in and kind of enjoy as a quiet moment. At least that's how I like to look at it.
No, it's a totally valid perspective. This is a top 20 for me for the year as well. So this would rank top 20 overall for me for sure. And like somebody else mentioned, Primordial, another great one that he's doing right now that isn't finished yet. So for me, I feel like I don't know where that one's going to land for me for next year, maybe. But yeah, he's got Primordial and Maze Book. We're dropping week to week, like together each month. So it's been another great one from Lemire as well.
I've got one more that I'm pretty sure is not on your list, but
let me run through a couple.
I've
got, I think, 2 more that I brought up. Shoot, I got 3. So I really need to go. This is a book nobody's talking about, and it came dangerously close to cracking my top 5. I think in the end, I probably put it in the 6 or 7 range. But I loved Origins. So this is a Boom Studio, another post-apocalyptic book. You would love it because a ton of robots, a ton of cloning and machines and I thought this was like a very impactful story in the way they really, you can see that the writers really created a story that was designed to like eat its own tail in a weird way. Like it comes back around again and themes play out over time. So you start the book off with a young lady who is taking care of a baby, only to kind of understand that the lady is an android and the baby is a clone that she's created of man. In a future where there's really no humans living on Earth, robots have found a way to clone this genius boy who is going to grow up to be the man to solve this crisis of living humanity on Earth. And so she's raising the boy and teaching him to get him prepared for the day when she injects him, and this is the first issue, injects him with the memories of all the previous lives he's had, so that he can then carry on the work of all the previous clones. And then she's just protecting him from the dangers of this post-apocalyptic Earth. Really great artwork. Yeah, like to 62 Lefty Blues perspective, artwork is really original and different, suits the story really well, and all the different robots they've got going on here, the designs are very original, very creative. And again, I love this like techno virus thing that's sort of like corrupting the planet and has eaten through, you know, humanity and is now trying to eat through the robots as well. Really creative concepts, and the ending for me sticks the landing in a big way, and I really thought they nailed it. So worth the trade. In fact, I recently got the trade version so I could read it a few more times and not open the books anymore. So
yeah, who wants to take books back out after you bag and board them?
So much work, all that tape.
Oh my God, why do we even keep them around?
Exhausting. So yeah, definitely recommend Origins. Top 10 of the year for me for sure. And then I'll do one more that I'm super biased from, and I know that not a ton of people are still talking about it, but I loved the ending to Die, and it would be a top 10 for me. Really, really, really love it. Hey, Lisa, how's it going? Good to see you. Thank you for coming by. First stream of 2022. You caught. Well, it's only the 5th day. It's actually might be my first one of 2022. So there you go. You're right on schedule. So we read issue 1 for book club. We have discussed Die a ton over the time we've done book club. As for me, at least, one of the best book club issue 1s we've ever done. For me,
yeah.
I love the final arc of Die, and it really focused in on the protagonist, this character who in real life was a man, but in the game was a woman and had really blurred the lines of his own gender and his own understanding of who he was. And the final issues really dove into gender in a big way and really looked at who is this character of Ash on the inside. How does he define or she define themselves? Really heady stuff for an era right now in American history, at least, where people are really looking at gender identity in a big way. This book was tackling it head on. And I think in that way, really put a different perspective on it through the looking glass of Dungeons and Dragons and roleplay, but also this character who lived years in 2 different bodies. So I really loved the ending, and I think it made some really impactful points in this perspective of gender. And I think it shouldn't be overlooked. If you're a fan of fantasy, science fiction, and adventure, I think there's a lot of adventure going on here. I think it also raised these great gender topics as well.
Yeah, I have not finished it yet, so I can't speak to that. But you know what I've read of Die, it's really, really great.
I think there were definitely weaker issues in that, I don't know, 12 to 15 range somewhere, but I think these last 5 for me were really strong. And I'm really looking forward to a nice hardcover edition and just plowing through it in straight order.
I mean, like, to critique or criticize something that, you know, to say it has weaker issues, it's still probably better than a lot of the stuff out there. You know,
absolutely.
They're weaker in comparison to the strong issues, not weaker in comparison to what's on the shelf.
No, yeah, exactly. That's a great point. And I think it's also a great, I think the combo of Gillen, the way he was writing, and Stephanie Hans and her art style, I think it's really a great example of what people are talking about a lot right now, which is the idea that the artist and writer shouldn't be separated as like one is the one who came up with the story, or the story is by this guy. No, like it's the combination of the two of them telling that story, and this is a perfect symbiotic kind of relationship.
And again, something I talk about all the time is that the artist is as much of a storyteller, or should be as much of a storyteller as the writer. Because comics are a visual medium. If you're not telling the story, at least in part, with the visuals, just write a book.
Which I think connects to any visual medium, whether it's movie or film. Like to say that the script is all that the movie is loses the cinematographer's incredible talent and the editor's incredible talent and the directors and the actors and all these other people that really created a visual story.
Yeah.
Unless it's Kevin Smith, and then in which case he just puts the camera anywhere. Shots fired. Orlando, really good movie. Yeah, Tilda Swinton, good movie. Good look, Gore dropping some deep cuts.
Yeah, Gore always knows. He knows.
Home runs.
He digests a lot of media.
Well, that's because he's our kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I think I know the one you want to mention. Do you want to do your? I believe it's an Image book.
Yeah, Righteous Thirst for Vengeance. Again, another book that there's only a few issues out, and it could really take a dump in the corner and roll around in it by the end. I mean, hey, you say screw the pooch, I say take a dump in the corner and roll around in it. You never heard that phrase before?
Yeah, that's a saying. That's a saying.
Where I come from, it is. Another kind of quieter book.
Oh yeah.
A lot of pages with no dialogue, but in another book where you kind of have to follow the story without knowing a lot of what's going on.
Totally.
But I mean that's right up my alley as far as things that I like. Is I don't want to be beaten over the head with what's happening. I want to be able to go on a journey with the characters.
Are you caught up on this one? Did you read the third issue yet?
Yes.
Because that issue was, I mean, for me, it paid off all the critiques of it's too slow with like, now we're going to give you like full throttle right down your throat. Here it comes.
Full on action movie.
Yeah. And yet at the same time, the narrative didn't feel jarring. Like it felt like it was building towards it. If you really looked, that the intensity was coming.
I still don't entirely understand what's happening. Like I'm starting to have a little bit of a better idea, but I mean, it's definitely like setting up stuff that is, if it pays off in a way that is satisfying, it's going to be really, really fun to read as a whole series.
Right. I don't even know how many issues they had said it would even be, because they've done 3, but I'm sure it feels like a 5 or a 6 issue, but I don't know.
It could be 12 though, or it could, I mean, it's definitely not an ongoing. It definitely feels like it has to have a bookend of sorts, because it's not the sort of thing that can just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
But so far, really great, really enjoying it.
Yeah, and I could see this being a top 5 or 10 for next year for me for the same all the same reasons. So this is definitely a book that's on my it's going to be on my list probably for next year. It's been really great, and I'm excited to see where Rick Remender finishes it out. All right, the other book is the only book that's like a mini series that's not finished that made into my top 5 for me is Not All Robots.
Yeah,
and
it's on my list too.
I think it's only got 1 issue left, and I feel like there's almost no way this strikes out. It's just been so good, and the concept so well played out, and the layers of thought going into this universe really phenomenal. I feel like it just goes in every direction, including a hilariously comedic, sarcastic direction sometimes as well.
Yeah, and this is one of those books that you insisted that I read, so much so that you sent me a couple issues, I think.
2 or 3. Yeah, it's like you got to read it.
And I mean, I was not disappointed. It's super entertaining. And again, if it blows it at the last minute, we'll see. But so far, I mean, what came out in 2021 and what I read of it in 2021, definitely on my list for the best reads of the year.
And if it were finished and if they were all as good as they've been along this way, it might have even gotten into the top 3. I think the only reason it's not in the top 3 is because it's not done yet. And that just gives me the chance to bring it up again next year.
Yeah.
I'll do it twice. Gore saying he's enjoying Righteous Thirst for Vengeance. The pace is like European films. The camera follows a character, misleading because one falsely thinks nothing is actually happening. And he mentions Remender's Deadly Class as well. So, yeah, those are definitely great points. And for me, Thirst for Vengeance reminds me of History of Violence, which is another comic and a movie, but has a similar kind of really intentional pacing. So,
yeah.
And I have yet to read that, so it's definitely a book. I've got the first trade, and I just haven't gotten around to it. I hear great things, though. All right, so that's for me at least. That's it on the not top 3s.
Yeah, I think that should cover mine as well.
Do we want to do top 3s now or covers? What would you prefer?
I mean, if you want us to keep rolling with talking about stories and then switch over to covers to wrap things up, I think that makes sense to me.
I love the plan. I love it. Okay, so what's a book you want to discuss here?
My number 3 is something we've already talked about, so we can go through it pretty quickly. It's Nice House on the Lake.
Yeah, boom, there we go.
It very easily could not stick the landing. It could really blow up on itself, but to have such a cool, unique horror book coming out from, again, not sure why it's the Black Label
or even DC.
Right, that's what I mean. Why this needs to be a DC book, but
kudos that they did.
Regardless, it doesn't matter because it is strictly a standalone. But just strange because pretty much all of the other Black Label books have been proprietary characters and stuff. Anyway, yeah, just super interesting, compelling story, told very well, and just, so far, so good. Really enjoyable.
Yeah, and I will say I have had no real complaints about this series either. Feels like one of the best things Tynan has done for me, at least that I've read, and one of the most consistent things that he's done. I've also loved a lot of the sort of thematic elements visually that the artist has been utilizing for symbols for characters and these bizarre art pieces and visual representations of what's happening out in the world. And, there's a lot of really fun sort of deeper cues happening visually within these frames as well. Jay Hood saying,
yeah, I'm sure it was
DC
some
publishing
sort of internal thing where
maybe
he either pitched this to them or they said, hey, we'll give you an indie style outlet for something you can write for us. It just has to be a Black Label. And he said,
right.
Okay, fine. But yeah, it's just, as I just think from a consumer's perspective, if you are going to a comic shop and you have no idea what this is, and you see Black Label DC and you're like, oh, is this just some sort of Batman book? And
yeah, when's John Constantine gonna show?
Definitely not. Yeah.
And it's possible with his success over on Somebody's Killing Children, they wanted something in that vein. And I think they've gotten way more than they probably bargained for with this.
Yeah, no, it's selling very, very well.
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
what I understand.
That's a great top 3 pick. I totally agree with. And I'm gonna go for number 3 for me. I think we're gonna have similar top 2 here. I'm gonna go with a book that I don't think enough people talk about either. I'm loving Rondé Barnes and Jason's Sean Alexander, the work they're doing on Philadelphia, and now on Nina Hawes' Nightmare blog as well. I think it's super genre, right? I mean, it's clearly horror, but the social commentary layers inside of that they play with are just as fascinating for me. Like, I can get a geek on like the bloody raw John Adams and his wife, like the having them just covered in blood and attacking and fighting and all the violence of that, or the perspective of race in America then and now that they also peel back in this. I just think exactly what Jason is saying, that people are sleeping on Philadelphia and how good it is. And I think they're on the 3rd trade paperback now. Just go grab them, check them out. I think that you would be shocked how good these are. They're not strictly horror. There is a ton of thinking going on behind the scenes here. And covers have been phenomenal. Frizen doing some great stuff. Obviously, the Sean Alexander cover A is also phenomenal and great. And I just truly think it's way underappreciated on all these great Image books coming out right now. Really underappreciated. And Steven Spock is here. What's going on, bearded ladies? I mean, I've been called worse. But I agree, Jason. I think it is a 10 out of 10. It's a book that whenever I get the next issue and I start reading it, I always forget, like, God, this is one of the best books I'm reading. I've forgotten by the time that issue comes back around how much I've been loving it. And then I read the new issue and I'm like, dang it, they got me again. Like, Rodney Barnes gets me again and again.
I am going to pose a question that I don't think we should really talk about for multiple reasons, mostly because we aren't necessarily the people to talk about it. And okay. It's going to be quite a departure from what we're talking about. But between this and Far Sector, 2 books that you and people in the chat have both said are really great and a lot of people are overlooking, how much of that do you think has to do with the fact that they're both kind of focused on people of color?
I mean, it's a great, bigger question than we'll ever get to. I totally agree. But it's a question I think worth having again and again. Right.
But I mean, yeah, sure. I think that it's a shame if that's the case, clearly. But when you look at historically comic books, it's white man.
Yeah.
Who both star in and read comics. I mean, clearly look at us. But so I just don't know if people are kind of just overlooking these titles because they see someone who is not a white man on these covers and say, you know, well, that's not for me, whether it be actively or subconsciously.
That's a great, I love knowing there's more people out there enjoying Far Sector, because it was definitely something that would be in my top 10 of the year for sure. And we mentioned it at the top of the show. But to Alec's point, I think there's a lot of things holding them back. I think for Far Sector, Green Lantern, the concept is holding it back.
Right.
In a big way, I think people, Green Lantern's always been like, I don't even want to say second tier DC. He feels like a 3rd tier DC character in a lot of ways, or at least that universe, because it's so big and so vast. In a lot of ways, it's like the X-Men of DC, because there's like 1 trillion characters in that universe.
Right.
So I think that is the biggest thing holding Far Sector back. But then, obviously, when you have the main character as a young black lady who is bisexual, and so it's not your typical, hey, white guy, you can pick this up and you can see yourself in this character right off the bat, because it is basically a mirror. Far Sector demands you to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes for a few hours, you know, when you're sitting around and enjoying that. And I think Philadelphia the same way. I don't instantly see myself in these characters until I start experiencing the story through their eyes. So in that way, it takes a little more, maybe a little more creativity or a little more imagination.
But at the same time, like, maybe it would do good for more of us to see that kind of perspective and say, hey, like maybe not everything is the way I see it through my eyes.
And I feel like my perspective is all the richer for that.
Sure.
I feel like my enjoyment of Far Sector and Philadelphia stems from being able to feel like I've experienced something outside my bubble.
Right.
And again, also the beauty of science fiction, which I mentioned for Far Sector, is, and this you could throw into that same concept, being able to explore these ideas without having it be the entire story, right? It's the subtext.
Sure.
It's the layered elements inside. And this is a horror comic about a father and son, one a vampire and one not, trying to solve the mystery of a murder. And apparently it's like Devil's Night in Philadelphia with all these vampires coming out. And Far Sector was a female superpowered character trying to keep peace between two populations in a far off world, where one group was not going to take their medication anymore and were going off the rails, and the ruling class wanted everybody to be medicated and calm and chill. I think in both cases they're raising wonderful social commentaries without having that be the entire story. It's the wonderful backstory, the subtext, the layering, the texture. So Charlie's coming in to talk. Bye, Charlie. Thank you. I don't know what's going on there. So let's hear some of these comments in the chat. A lot of things going on. Scott says, I think they're doing better in the bookstore market as trades. Wouldn't be surprised by that. I think Alec's point holds, though, as the direct market versus bookstore market might be serving different demos. Direct market is very cis, hetero, male, white guy. NK Jemison to the X-Men would be an amazing gift. Yeah, I totally agree. She is a real talent. I would love to read some of her novels as well. Gore says Philadelphia's problem is that it is a middle ground between horror and historical fiction and might turn off one or the other. I could see that.
Or
people
both.
who want one or the other. Yeah. Ooh, Entropy is a Philadelphia fan. Glad to see that. And if you don't want too much reality, I totally get it. But that's the fun of it. I think you can read a horror and then that stuff is still there. It's not like the entire focus.
Right. But again, like whether or not someone would enjoy this is a much different question than whether or not someone's going to pick it up.
True. This is true. Which is hopefully the benefit of shows like this, where maybe we highlight something you hadn't thought of checking out, and then maybe somebody gives it a shot. So we got two left, and we agree on the last two, I think.
No.
The question is, what order do you want to go in? So what would you
I think
put
you
as
should do your number 2 because it is not on my top 3.
All right. Well, this is my number 2.
Yeah. It is my one and only Marvel book on the list this year, but it didn't quite crack my top 3. I mean, it's a boatload of fun. I'll let you talk about it since it's in your top 2, but
it was in my top 10 probably all the way until the end, and then the final issue is what pushed this to me to the top 3. And I was not expecting to be like emotionally impacted by Beta Ray Bill's journey the way I was in the final issue when he's looking at his own reflection. I was like a little bit wrecked from him, you know? And I think that's what ended up pushing it up one more notch for me. I just felt like, wow, I really care about a character that I really had not read much of, or he'd always been in the background of other Thor books or whatever. And then I was enjoying the arc of his story. And then all of a sudden, wham, the emotional gut punch. That last panel that Daniel Warren Johnson does, where you see Beta Ray Bill's reflection, and it's all about how he views himself. And so when he's got to face his own reflection at the end of the journey, and he hasn't, come to a place where he feels better, that's beautiful. Really well done.
And this is another one of those books that like I didn't even think about giving it a chance because I don't really care about Thor in general or Beta Ray Bill. even less. But it was another one where you were like, you got to read this. And I was like, okay. And it definitely did not let me down. It is a hell of a good time. I mean, I don't mean that like it's all puppies and kittens, but it's just like, it's funny, it's emotional, it's interesting, it's thought provoking, it's, you know, all these different things that, like, who would have thought out of a Beta Ray Bill comic? But yeah, really great.
What's up, Ben? Good to see you, my man. I appreciate you coming by. And people are mentioning Extremity, which I don't know that I've ever read, so I'll have to look for that one. I have read his Murder Falcon, which I really enjoyed. And I have read his Wonder Woman Dead Earth, which I really enjoyed. And I would recommend all of those as well.
I read the first issue of Extremity when it first came out and did not stick with it, but maybe I'll have to go back and look at it.
I mean, at this point, I feel like he is an artist-writer combo on his own that is worthy of checking out pretty much anything he's doing. So I'm down for that. Johnson took many of us by surprise. You've read Simonson's Thor in the 80s, and Beta Ray Bill's introduction was risky at the time, but it worked. And glad to see that he's in this book here that Johnson created. So yeah, this is a top 3 for me. I could go back and forth with Philadelphia and this. I don't know that, you know, one is certainly more mainstream with the Marvel side than the other, but I really enjoyed both. Okay, so we don't have the same number 2. What is Alec's number 2?
So my number 2 is going to be a bit controversial, I think, because it's only been 2 issues, and it's also surprising that I have 2 of my top 3 books are published by DC.
What's going on?
But it is Catwoman Lonely City. It is just the feeling I get reading this book is why I love comics. It's just so great. And there has not been a Batman book or a Bat family book that I've enjoyed this much in a very long time. It is, at this point, like, I don't have a problem saying this, that I know it's not over yet, but it's a masterpiece. Like, it is everything I want from a Batman book.
JP said he's just read issue 2.
So good. And like, all of the characters are so well considered on not just a surface level, but like a deeper level of who they are as people. And I think that's really what sells it for me. It's not just about the plot. It's about seeing these characters and where they've come from and where they went to, and seeing them as people. And like, a tiny little example is when she's talking to Edward Nygma, and she's making fun of his, you know, the suit he used to wear, and he's like, "Yeah, I did a lot of coke back then." And it's like, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
No.
Or my yeah, that makes total sense, right? My favorite is all the uses of Killer Croc.
Killer Croc is incredible.
I've never liked the character more than in this series.
A number of like legitimate laugh out loud moments for me, which is really hard to achieve in a comic. But when he says like, "Don't piss in my soup," and
he looks like a teenage British gangster.
Yeah,
like the outfits he wears, the jumps, the tracksuits and stuff.
And when there's that like montage scene, and you see her like walking up to him, it just says, "Who doesn't flush?"
And then he's like, "Sorry."
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, this is a great book, and I could easily, for my 2022, I could see this when the final issue comes out. I could easily see this making it, and this ranks above any of the Batman books I've read this year or Bat Family stuff. Save Nightwing maybe for me right now.
Oh, this is like so far and above Nightwing for me. Like, it is, like, first of all, like, Cliff Chang's art is just so delightful to look at.
Totally. I love all the Catwoman inside of her reflection here. So good.
It's just so great.
Totally. Riddler does blow. This dude is out of his gourd. I mean, he is. Like, yeah.
I also like how during that conversation, she's like, I think you liked testing him. I think that's why you like doing it. He's like, yeah, I never really hurt anyone seriously. Like, I was setting up these things because it's like what I enjoyed doing, and I happened to be a villain with it. But
yeah,
like, that's the sort of thing where I'm like, you're really thinking about these characters. You're not just saying like, oh yeah, the Riddler is A, B, and C, and he fits into this box. It's like, okay,
right.
why? He's tackling the why behind a lot of this stuff.
Absolutely. And that makes it more meaningful anyways, because now you feel like some new layer of Edward Nygma got peeled back.
Yeah.
And it fits with how you've not necessarily thought about the Riddler before, but what you know of Riddler.
Right.
Kyle mentions, yeah, sorry, brother, you just missed Philadelphia like 10 minutes ago. So scroll it back a little bit and you will catch the love for sure. And shout out to C Wood in the chat.
What up, C Wood?
Thanks for coming by, man. And we have finished our top 2 and 3, which leaves us to top number 1. And it's the second half of Alec tonight. You can see it there.
No surprise, I don't think, to anybody. I mean, clear winner for me.
Yes.
As complimentary as I just was to Catwoman Lonely City, this book is just an absolute artistic marvel from every angle. It's just, it is, I said it before, it's this year's Little Bird for me. It is something that I will hold dear for many, many years to come.
And I if you are watching this and you've yet to try it out, you can stop the show, mute the show, whatever. Just go and get the trade when it comes out. Just get it, because I think at this point, when I went through and did a little research and tried to see what other people's lists looked like, I was very happy to see how many different YouTubers I respect had this book somewhere in their top 5, top 3, or number one slots. This book came up again and again. And huge thank you and shout out to Jennifer from Comic Books Will Break Your Heart, because she got an advanced copy of issue 1 and 2, I want to say, and was singing the praises of this book about a month before it came out, and made sure that everyone who watched her channel or that she joined on other channels was aware of the book and ready for it when it came out.
And not to take anything away from her, she's a tremendous person and a wonderful YouTuber, but how long have you been doing this? I never got an advanced copy of anything.
I mean,
the hell.
She's way nicer than I am, though.
Yeah, well, me too. And she also, I think, takes this a little more seriously than we do.
That's also probably true. Looks like the chat is agreeing a lot of stuff that they feel about it. And I love the comments of the little cigarette. I think that's what that's supposed to be, because the cigarette, the life of the cigarette, was a very fascinating story, that one issue. JP says the trade comes out later this month and he's going to get it when it does.
Yeah, I mean, you won't be disappointed.
So there you go, JP. Seawood, you are just as set. Definitely an onion of a book with lots of layers, emotion, introspection. Number 3 for Kyle on his list. But you don't read books. I know that you don't read. So there you go. That's I don't know what more we can say about Layla Starr. I think it's hugely creative in art and storytelling.
We did a whole number of episodes of the show on it.
We broke down a ton of these through the year on Book Club, and I just really want people to go and check it out, because I think you'll be surprised how impactful bizarre story about Indian gods could really be.
Yeah,
so there you go.
Really great.
So that brings us to the final segment, and we're not going to make Alex stay up too late on a school night. He's got to be at school tomorrow.
Yeah. If by school you mean
the drudgery of life,
the school of hard knocks. I don't know.
We wanted to finish with covers, some of our favorite covers of the year, and not only do I have basically 3 covers that I want to highlight as my favorites, there are also other covers from the year that I just want to at least give some love to or some shout out to. So I'm gonna swap us around just a little bit like that and hold up a few before I go to the top 3, and we can get to those in a second. These Noto covers I really loved.
He's so good.
A great way to finish the Cable storyline with young Cable and old Cable and everything going on was this split. And I don't think enough credit came to him for how great these close-ups came out. What a great pair of covers those were. We mentioned Frizen, but David Mack also doing his usual bang-up great stuff. And this is one of my favorite Philadelphia covers, period. And there's been a bunch of great ones. The same with the Saturday Evening Post homage covers they've been doing for Nita Hawes' Nightmare blog.
Yeah, so good.
Just phenomenal stuff that really blew me away. And I think I'm going to save the rest of those for later. We both talk a lot about fun negative space covers. Thought this was a great Green Lantern cover. Great use of action. If only this happened in the comic, I would have probably had it be in my top 3, but it didn't. It's baloney. Okay, so those are the ones I wanted to hold up. Did you have any you wanted to hold up outside of the top 3 you shared? With me?
I think I shared more than 3 maybe, but because I didn't really pick a top 3 per se. But everything that I pulled aside to show, I think I sent you images of. So
yes. Do you want me to jump to those then?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So let's see here. I saw. Do you want the X one first?
Sure.
Whoops, sorry. I should do this. Sorry. Wah, wah. And then swap us back. There we go. Look, the gap is nice.
Give my boobs back.
Don't want to take them away.
This was artist exclusive, Ji Hyung Lee. And I try to avoid buying a lot of those just because it's a can of worms that I don't care to open.
Yeah.
There is a Virgin cover as well, which there we go.
Yeah.
But I saw this and it was one of the ones that I just could not resist because I don't know. I just thought it looked so cool. It's, whenever, it's easy to say it's just X-23 standing there, but there's a personality and emotion to the pose and to the expression that you don't see every day in a lot of covers. A lot of times it's just people standing there or looking super sexy or whatever. And I feel like I liked the gritty bloodiness of this.
And the thing that I had not seen it until you shared it with me tonight. The thing I was caught off guard with was the light. So I love the fact that the X-Men logo looks like a neon billboard or something behind her, like a sign.
You kind of lose that on the Virgin one, and
then the lighting coming down from above on her, really great.
Cool.
I wish there'd been a trade dress or a Virgin variant that just got rid of the Marvel and the issue 3 part, but kept the X-Men logo because I love it. Let's see here.
Yeah, I don't know if it's sold out or not, but I got it straight from the Ji Hyung Lee's website. So
nice. So for me, the one I wanted to bring up in this X was exactly what somebody in the chat was talking about, which is this series of 4 Inferno covers. This is obviously the Emma Frost Gorgeous one. They have a really great Moira McTaggart one, which I freaking loved as well. And did I load the other ones? No, but there's a Magneto one that I forgot to pull out. And then the one that they're talking about in the chat is the Mystique / X-23 one from today, where it's half and half. You get a little bit Mystique halfway.
That's cool.
And I think you put them all together. That's this wonderful white background, simplistic kind of thing with one character, and they're not really looking at you. They're just looking away. And I think it just really came out a fun, DeCall, I think is the artist. Jeff DeCall, thanks, Trailblazing. The set of 4 Really great, simple design. The background looks like it's like they're on a cruise ship or something.
Mhm.
It's very like simple design. I think it really just came out well. So those were the X variants that I wanted to highlight as well. Just some really great stuff. And then, sorry, I think the decal one that I really wanted to mention was, I think I did throw an extra one in here. I'm realizing while I'm doing this. I did. Son of a bitch. Well, here it is. That.
Yeah,
I
very funny.
just love this cover. It's so good. It's so good. And I love that the pictures are all black and white. And it's just so freaking good. And I saw this cover and was like, yes. I even ended up buying this one to not open, and then a different book, like a different variant that I could read. I liked it so much. So they did a lot of great stuff with Mystique this year and the X titles, and I thought that just Oh, this is Del Mundo. Thanks, Jason. This just this is just phenomenal. So there's some love for the X books that came out this year. Let's see here. Next up for you, what did you want? I got I can't remember what was next.
Like I said, I didn't really order them, so
yeah. Okay, so you have DC and you got Image. What do you like?
I should have a Marvel in there too.
What was there?
Maybe,
Marvel
or did I not load that one?
Well, didn't we just do this? This is the Marvel one, right?
No, it's not the Marvel one. I mean, I can just show it if you didn't get it.
Yeah, I don't think I loaded another Marvel one.
Okay.
Did I not do that? Yeah, I don't think I did. Yeah, I can believe it. Yeah, I don't remember getting that one. Oh, yeah, you sent it to me like the day before. Crap.
That's okay. This just came out a couple weeks ago. Obviously, if you follow the secondary market, it's getting super, super hot, and for good reason. I think as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is going to be a big variant. And again, much like what I was saying with the artist exclusives, I've been trying to avoid variants, but I couldn't pass this one up. I think it's so dynamic and colorful and unique with that big, again, that big negative space. Really, like, I think it was what does it for me, because if the whole cityscape was behind the whole picture, I don't think it would have impacted me the same way. But it's just
it looks like it almost looks like wings.
Yeah, so graphically interesting to me that.
JP's saying right there. Yeah, he says it's blowing up.
Yeah, blowing up for sure.
Well, that's good, because I'm glad you went with an extra one, because that means I'm okay with still having 2 left and you've got 2 left. And all of my covers I've got left are DC variants. So let me swap those back and put us back to this way. I don't know that these are in any order for me. I'm just kind of mentioning ones that I loved, but I loved this cover. Maybe it's just the Christopher Reeve fan in me. I love seeing the Superman in his, Fortress of Solitude, crystalline sort of cover style. I think they just really did a great job. This is Miko Suyan on top of Jim Lee, I guess you could say. I don't buy online exclusive variants, and I definitely went out and snagged this. And I, of course, wanted it with the trade dress. I think it's so much better with the trade dress. And just a beautiful, beautiful cover. And
this is definitely one of those covers that, like, the trade dress is what makes it.
Right.
Because it stylistically, it ties it together.
For sure. Certainly.
What's up, Ryan?
What's up, Ryan? Good to see you, man. I'm glad you had an extra one, because I can show 17 more. That's just my attitude. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, it's the Christopher Reeve fan in me, the kid in me who was 1 when the movie came out. This just has a ton of nostalgia feels for me. So there you go, my Superman 78 Miko Suyan variant, and that takes us. So now you've got a DC and an Image. What do you like?
Go the DC.
There you go.
A lot of these Nightwing covers for this run have been absolute dynamite, but this second print of 79 for me stands out as just like really encapsulating kind of like the fun attitude of this series, where it's just
Definitely.
so cool, like the little history of his costumes throughout the years. And you got Barbara in there, and little cameo by Alfred holding up the cape at the end.
That's for me what does it, is Alfred's hands holding the cape, especially when you think about how Alfred is sort of looming in the background of this storyline too.
And I also always appreciate when second prints or subsequent prints like this contain original artwork rather than something that's just recolored or interior artwork. It really
Great point.
suckers me into buying it. So maybe I hate them, but it's like I appreciate that they actually give you something a little bit extra if you like collecting this sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, this is a great. Yeah, again, like you're saying, the homage to the Adam West Burt Ward TV show. Lots of great love for the mythos of the Bat family. Great. So for my last one, I'm going to mention really just an artist and their run on Robin. So this is Francis Manipal, I believe Manipal is the last name. And he's been doing these fun like color variants where he just basically picks a color to highlight the image, and it blows out the background and then bleeds into the main art. So this is issue 4 that he did. And the one I love the most would be issue 2. Same kind of idea where he lets it kind of just bleed over.
Yeah.
Issue 3, I didn't like as much. This is my favorite one. The use of the blood splatter on his hands. The way the red just kind of bleeds into everything. It's even like across his nose and his face. I just don't think anybody's talking about it. It's not Francis Manipal, is it? I think it's Francis.
Yeah, I think so.
Just really great for me. I just dig the way the perspective, the low angle on this one. Not a lot of talk happening about these covers. I think they're just really cool. I know Fire Guy Ryan, he knows what's up. I want to say he did a set of 4 or 5 for this run, but for me, it's issue 2 that's the banger. It's just phenomenal. And I've gone back and forth with this book, Trailblazing. There was issues that I think are just phenomenal, and issues where I'm like, just get to the story. Let's get back to it. Let's get to the point. Get to the point. So I've gone back and forth on it, and I might read the finale of it digitally because it just took too long to really get rolling. But that issue when it was all the Robins together made it worth the while. And it's fun because your final cover is also a red cover.
Yep. Promiscuous Time Traveler said, I'm waiting for the Jenny Friesen Catwoman covers. Yeah, like I could have picked any of those. I just feel like every year it's like, oh, here's another great Jenny Friesen cover. Like she just does great work. I think goes without saying at this point. I was trying to kind of pick some other things, but yeah, sure. I mean, you're not wrong. Yeah, I mean, this should be no surprise to anyone. It's a negative space cover. It's a single figure. It's super graphic. It's like exactly what I ask for on a cool cover, as far as I'm concerned. So this, to me, I mean, you left it for last, is probably my favorite cover of the year.
I'll give it how much time we've spent discussing Carmen over the last year. I think it's kind of fitting too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're totally right. It's very graphic light, and in that way, far more striking than your typical cluttered Marvel, DC, whatever cover.
Yeah.
Of course, Gore's happy about this. DeCal is going to be doing Catwoman covers. Oh, there's DeCal Catwoman covers. Is that happening later on? I don't know about that. Sorry. This is our last cover of the night, so I'm sorry, everybody. This is kind of the end of the show. And right when Michael arrived, good to see you, Michael. Thank you for coming by. Happy Wednesday. Happy birthday to Sam's Tangled Web. It was his 50th. It would have been his 50th birthday today. Perfect that it's a new comic book day and a chance to look back at 2021. So happy birthday to him. Time Traveler says, touche, White Whale, Carmen is in my top 5 books. So there you go.
Well, glad I redeemed myself.
Anything last you want to say about this cover? Are you feeling good about it?
No, it's just super, super good. I mean, I don't. What can you say about it? It looks great. It looks great on the shelf. It looks great up close. Yeah, it's like, hey, you want to draw a cover specifically for White Whale Comics? Here you go. Here's the blueprint for it.
The recipe is there. Yeah. So that's it. That's the 2021 recap from Book Club, New Comic Book Day Book Club. Thank you, everybody, for coming by. I know that Alec has got Dungeons and Dragons with me in 2 weeks from Sunday, or a week from Sunday.
From Sunday, yes.
Anything else coming up before then that people should be aware of from you?
I mean, that's a ways out. Who knows? But nothing on the books as of yet. But if you didn't watch Session 0 on JP's channel, go back and check that out, where we introduce all of our characters, including my character, Gargle D's Nuts.
Son of Dragon.
Son of I'm Dragon These Nuts. And so in a week from Sunday, we're going to actually start the new campaign. Yeah. Very excited. JP's first time DMing, but sounds like he's putting a lot of thought into it. So
yes, indeed.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So that's where you can be watching and ready for Alec and I. And for me, I don't have anything coming up right away. Saturday morning comics with my girls on Saturday. Sunday we are off. Monday is Comic Gories. I'm set up to have an all-women panel because we have our first female champ in a while. And so Mars is going for her second win, and I got a few other ladies to go and compete with her. And then Omni X-Men is back next Tuesday on Justin No Good Comics channel. So we'll be over there talking about that issue right there. Uncanny X-Men 141, classic X-Men storyline, Days of Future Past. So we're going to be diving into that issue next Tuesday on Justin's channel. So be ready for that. And then at the beginning of February, we will be back looking at the books from January.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds like that's everything.
That sounds like everything too. Thanks, everybody. Happy New Year, as Trailblazing is saying. And we will hopefully see you guys back here again soon. Bye.